And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Justin, joined as always by David and JP. We are currently at pick 218 in the NFL draft as we record Saturday, April 27th. We have been very excited just to be watching the NFL draft. Everything that has been going on is always fun. On today's show, we are going to start with closing thoughts on the draft that we weren't able to get into our instant reaction videos. We're going to share the result of our draft game from last episode. We'll bring a 2-round rookie mock draft, and we close, of course, with our community question. We wanted to start out discussing players today, day 3 players. So, of course, we're going to discuss some winners from day 3 here. We do want to caveat that with they are day 3 players. So, even though we're saying they're winners from day 3, it means the fact that they got this unideal landing spot, which has correlation, of course, with NFL and fantasy success, job security. They got a better landing spot given the fact that they slid. So we're not telling you to spend up for those guys. We will give kind of a general idea of a range of where we might want to be targeting these guys as well. So don't take this as must-buy players. Take these as guys that they won given the fact that they were here and buy them at a value. JP, who is the first guy you have here?
I think the biggest name that we have in day 3 is Troy Franklin. Yeah, he tumbled from the projected second round draft capital, so don't love to see that for him. I really do like the landing spot there with the Broncos. They traded away Jerry Jeudy. Outside of Cortland Sutton, they've got guys like Lil Jordan Humphrey and Tim Patrick, so he realistically could be the wide receiver 2 there. And he is paired up with his college teammate Bo Nix, so they already have that chemistry coming into the NFL together, which is pretty exciting.
Can't forget Marvin Mims there, of course, as well, but he was not the most exciting analytical prospect as a rookie. David, who is your first guy here?
Yeah, I got to talk about my guy, Javon Baker.
Victory lap.
Sort of. Yeah. Victory lap after the race ended, 20 minutes ago or something. It's like going the distance by a cake, right?
Going for speed.
You don't love the day 3 capital by any means, but at least he's going somewhere he's got opportunity. There's really not much above him on the depth chart. I expect him to start in 3 wide receiver sets at the very least. If Drake May turns out to be a good quarterback, Javon Baker has a decent shot to be a good receiver for fantasy. I'm excited he at least has a chance to play.
Can't disagree. My first guy going to be Spencer Rattler. He is a winner simply based on the fact that I think he's in a landing spot where we have a QB that by the second half of the season could be out of a starting job if the Saints are struggling. Round 5 draft capital, So not really interested in that perspective. Just a place where I could see the quarterback being out of a job. He could be a starter. I'm thinking this is a guy that I'm going to be targeting in the 4th round of NFL drafts. The other 2 guys that they talked about, we will talk about their potential draft capital in the mock draft section later for sure. JP, who's your next guy and where are you thinking of taking him?
So my next guy up is Malik Washington. I think I might be interested in him in the 3rd round. He lands with the Miami Dolphins, so I like that spot pretty well because I like the coach there. I think that the offense it's pretty good overall. Tua is pretty solid quarterback. And outside of Tyreek and Waddle, and there's nobody that really makes me think he's not going to be there in 3 wide receiver sets. So with Tyreek's age, yeah, maybe he's going to be a guy in year 2, year 3 that starts to step up more. I don't think he's an X wide receiver. I think he can fit into a role. And what I do like is that they don't really use tight ends in the receiving game as well. So I think he could clearly be the 3rd option. But yeah, Waddle and Tyreek are very good. So I don't expect him to be a big producer year 1.
David, second player for you?
Yeah, I went with Kamani Vidal, running back out of Troy, lands with the Chargers. They didn't really take anyone earlier, so his path to producing is very clear. Just needs to beat out Gus Bus and J.K. Dobbins. Who knows with the Dobbins injury, but that's not the most competitive backfield. I think he's got a shot to be the lead back in what we expect to be a run-heavy team. That's all you can ask for running backs these days.
Given that, is he a late 3rd, early 4th type of target for you or potentially earlier?
I'll have to rework my rankings once we get all this information in, but I have a feeling he'll be in the mid-3rd somewhere.
All right, of course. instant reactions are hard to have a exact idea just yet. Theo Johnson is my second player. Tight end, went to the Giants in a tight end premium. This guy, fourth tight end, at least fantasy relevant tight end off the board for me. I think that he's a guy in a tight end premium 1.75 or higher. I'm willing to start thinking about him in the mid third as well. Non-tight end premium, he's a fourth rounder for me. JP, who is your next player?
I have Jatavian Sanders as my third and last player here, and he lands with the Carolina Panthers. They need weapons. You know, they got Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson, but at the tight end, I think there's Tommy Tremble. I mean, their depth chart at tight end was pretty darn bad. So I do think that he has a chance to start as a rookie. He might need to develop a little bit, but I think he's got great hands and a pretty solid understanding against zone. So, yeah, he might pop up a little bit here in his rookie season and start to grow with Bryce Young.
And say we have a 1.75 or higher tight end premium mock draft. What range are you kind of viewing him as round-wise?
I think I'm still going to take him behind Ben Sinnott, who I think is probably near the end of the second round. So it's probably going to be the middle of the third round, but it's hard to sparse out exactly right now.
Absolutely. David, last guy you have here?
Yeah, I picked Isaac Guerrero, big riser at the combine, just an athletic freak. Actually compares pretty favorably to Eli Mitchell, who we saw what San Francisco was able to do with him before they got CMC in the fold there. Obviously, CMC is the starter there. He's the guy. He's going to get all the work. But if he does happen to go down, injuries happen in the NFL all the time. I think Guerrero has a nice path to production there.
In general range, you're evaluating him in rookie drafts off the top of your head?
Probably be mid to late third.
All right. And my last player, Tyrone Tracy, running back, drafted by the New York Giants. He's just a guy, Devin Singletary and what? That's the depth chart, right? Not really anything incredibly threatening there. He had interesting efficiency metrics, only played running back for 2 years. So a guy I'm potentially interested in the fourth round. I'm not touching him in the third round. Any running back on a 53 at that point, especially with murky depth charts. So potential interest there. Now we're going to go ahead. We're going to move on to veterans. So we love talking about the rookies. That's the exciting thing this time of year. However, all of these rookies are getting added to NFL rosters, mixing things up. Some people get pushed up or down depth charts. More competition is added. Quarterbacks get great weapons. So a lot of potential for mixing that up as well. So we want to bring one winner and one loser for each person, or potentially a positional group loser. So David, start us out with a player or positional group loser.
Yeah, I went with the wide receivers in Indianapolis for the Colts there. They had an A.D. Mitchell. Last year, Alec Pierce was basically out there running wind sprints. I think he ran the third most go routes in the NFL. A.D. Mitchell can run those routes, but he can actually get open. So he's going to take some targets away. I think they're all good. I think this probably hurts Downs more than it hurts Pittman, just because, as we know, targets are earned. I do think Pittman is very good. I still expect him to be a good receiver. I just think they kind of all hurt each other a little bit here, especially with a run-first offense.
That scares me for my limited exposure to Downs especially. Cannot disagree. Too many mouths to feed. JP, who is your first guy?
So my loser I'm talking here is going to be Kyren Williams. We expected that they might have a running back, but I think Blake Corum was kind of on the higher end than what we expected. Last year, 35% of Kyren's fantasy production came from touchdowns, and he was on pace to score a total of 21 touchdowns last year before he got injured. So yeah, he was a beast in the red zone, and that's what Blake Corum is best at. His touchdown totals in college were absurd. He was really, really good in the red zone. So I think that Sean McVay, even if he does still stick with Kyren Williams as the workhorse, which we kind of expect, I think that Blake Corum will at least take some touchdown opportunity from Kyren Williams.
Yeah, for my Kyren shares, I'm hoping that's not the case. He does like to go with a workhorse back. There is that possibility. However, they bought a battering ram. It's like Grond from Lord of the Rings, right? You don't bring this giant thing that can beat through a door. Not that he's that big, but he's good at touchdowns. So it does give you some concern for sure. I'm a little hesitant on Kyren at this point as well. So my guys here, positional group as well. It's going to be Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. I'm not as worried about DJ Moore's dynasty value necessarily. Keenan Allen's dynasty value is literally just what he can produce this year. And the thing I think is just the ceiling on any Chicago's Bear pass catcher season long is just no longer there. There's too many mouths to feed. I still think they're all phenomenal. And I'm okay with rostering any of them, but I don't think any of them have a wide receiver one as a probable outcome without an injury to another player. So many mouths to feed, rookie quarterback. So to me, all losers, not huge losers, but range of outcome losers.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was touching on when we did our round one reaction video, and I picked the Dunze as a loser. There's just three really good wide receivers, and you've got a rookie quarterback. Even if he's an excellent prospect, he's still a rookie quarterback.
And you know, David, this really kind of summarizes our relationship as podcasters. Is usually it takes 2 days for you being right for it to sink into my head. So, what other insight do you have about a winner that I can ruminate on for the next couple days?
Sure, yeah. I'm kind of just going to the other side of the coin here from Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson's a big winner. He now has three weapons. He's got a deep, field stretcher kind of guy in A.D. Mitchell, which is something that offense lacked. Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. I mean, if he can stay healthy, sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been as big of an Anthony Richardson fan, but with the weapons he's got in place, I think I'm going to start kind of reevaluating that a little bit. I definitely see this as a plus for him. JP, who is your guy that's one value?
It's going to be Zamir White. We thought that they might bring in a day 2 running back, and no, they did not. So Zamir White seems to be the starter. It reminds me of the situation of another White, Rashad White, last year. So and he remained the workhorse because they didn't really have anybody else. And he's not bad. He showed last year, the last 4 weeks when Josh Jacobs was out, he was a top 20 running back all 4 weeks and had double-digit points. So he's a solid running back. I don't think he's great. If the depth chart around you isn't good, you're going to get touches, and you don't need to be that great as long as you're getting volume. And the depth chart behind him is Alexander Madison, who was not good last year. I don't think so. And then it's Amir Abdullah as well. So, yeah, I think he's going to be stepping into a good amount of volume here coming into 2024.
I love it. I bought low on him this offseason. I am excited he dodged landmines all offseason. Now, my winner is a positional group as well, but not really positional group. Two specific names. Ezekiel Elliott, if he signs with the Cowboys. Rico Dowdle, if Zeke does not. We're through the 6th round. No running back. So worst case scenario, 7th round running back with only my boys Frank Gore and Cody Schrader still on the board. Not guys that you are super scared about. Dak loves him. He'll dump it off to him. I mean, just a volume monster if he goes there. And if he doesn't, Rico Dowdle knows the offense. So I think those are potentially big winners.
I do think whenever we know who the leader is, which I think you're probably expecting it to be Zeke, just because he's been there and he was still pretty solid on the Patriots. I don't know how much he has left in the tank. I mean, if it is a timeshare between Zeke, Dowdle, and Royce Freeman, yeah, I mean, it might be pretty messy. But if somebody does emerge here, yeah, that's definitely a pretty solid situation for them to be getting volume in that good of an offense.
I mean, that's the reason we were really excited about someone getting drafted there, right? So now, David first, then JP. Quick answer. Now that we have almost everything done, right, besides round 7, we have all the key landing spots, all the key draft capital, any trades that would have transpired. I'm assuming we're not going to see T. Higgins traded for a 7th rounder. How do we feel about this draft, David? Is it as good as it was hyped up to be, coming up short, etc.?
I think the top of the draft, like your first round selections, probably maintained value for the most part. I do think the depth of this draft is not what we expected as a group. And that's just kind of a lesson in not expecting your mid to late seconds or later picks to be impactful picks. That's why I always like to trade them if I can, or if I'm in a rebuild, obviously take some dart throws. But I like to have the flexibility of future draft capital to trade for production when I need it. At this point, it's basically going to be cashed in for something that you hope turns into something, but you might just be burning the pick.
Yeah, to quote Roger the Alien from American Dad, if I was the type of person that could learn from situations, I would learn from this. JP, how do you feel about this one?
I mostly agree. I think the first round picks that people have, they're still going to be pretty happy with for the most part. Second round picks and rookie drafts, man, I think that's where we really lost value. I mean, guys like A.D. Mitchell, I mean, he fell really far, went to a bad spot. And there's a lot of guys, even running backs especially. There's only 2 running backs now that I'm really that interested in within the top 2 rounds. Maybe the end of round 2, somebody like Corum. But yeah, I think that this class is a little disappointing based on what our expectations were.
Yeah, expectations versus reality, tale as old as time for sure. And before we hop into our rookie mock draft, our draft order is going to be decided by last week's rookie game that we did, where we picked the landing spots for the round 1 wide receivers. Quick reminder how the rules went. We got 1 point for correct draft order within the position, 3 points for the correct landing spot, and we lost 3 points if we named a wide receiver who doesn't go round 1. So we're not going to walk through all picks because we know you guys care a lot more about what happened with the rookies. Just a couple quick highlights. I won, of course, because as you know, I'm obviously just the greatest. No, actually, it's just because I picked Xavier Legette to go round 1. Did not get the landing spot correct, but did pick him as the 7th wide receiver off the board. So that was the highlight of me, best, the greatest.
Boy, did he sneak in. You just barely got that.
Just barely.
And the Panthers felt like they needed to trade up for it. 1 pick. Yep. But he sure enough did go in the first round.
And David, you came in second. I believe that was because you got Cardinals picking Marv as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, there were a few little discrepancies between JP and I, but most of them canceled out.
We were all just 1 point apart in the end, but JP will end up with the 3rd pick in our mock draft. That was a fun exercise, and we thought it would be fun to let it decide the order of our mock draft. So moving into our mock draft now, of course, we're going to be doing this with our standard dyno construction format, 1.75 tight end premium and superflex, full PPR, no bonuses for running backs. So I will pick the first pick, David second, JP third, and then just going in that order throughout. At this point, I do have to make a decision, and I have been ruminating on this for a little bit. At the 101, all off-season, I have been picking Marvin Harrison Jr. I think I am switching with the Adunze edition to drafting Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
So I will be taking him 101. I have flip-flopped and made David a very happy man.
Yeah, that hurried running footsteps you hear in the background is me running up to the podium to take Marv. The top 2 are very clear. I think they strengthened their position, honestly. So it's very clear you're taking one of these guys at 102 and you're going to be happy about it.
There's a reason they're called generational. JP, who are you going with at the 3rd pick?
So with the way that the draft shook out, with Jaden Daniels going ahead of Drake May and him, they have Marcus Mariota there. He's going to start. And he is more, he's more developed than what Drake May is because he's been in college longer. So I think he's got a really, really good chance to start the full season as a rookie, whereas Drake May, I don't think he will start the whole season, at least from week 1. So I'm going to take Jaden Daniels here. With his rushing upside, I kind of like the situation in Washington. They had a lot of draft capital, and they bolstered up their team, and they already have a true number 1 wide receiver there in Terry McLaurin.
Scary Terry is a good wide receiver. Cannot argue with that pick at all. I was hoping to get him here, but since I didn't, I am going to go Malik Neighbors. Now, of course, we are a little bit less excited with the Giants than the Chargers, maybe just like infinitely. However, he is still going to volume his way. That depth chart is barren, like I said in our immediate reaction video. He is no longer in the same tier as Marv for me. He wasn't necessarily either, but like there's not even like a consideration, right? 1 good landing spot, 1 okay landing spot. But he is still my clear wide receiver too, albeit in a different tier than Marv, clearly at this point. So kind of a no-brainer for me given the quarterback's landing spots and or profiles.
Yeah, I would have been happy if you let him slide to be here at 5, but I agree with everything you said there. This is kind of an interesting decision. I don't love Odunze's landing spot. I love the prospect. I don't love Bauer's landing spot. I love the prospect. I love Drake May's landing spot. I love the prospect. I love JJ McCarthy's landing spot. I don't love the prospect.
Do it, please.
There's a lot of options here. I think I'm going to stick to my pre-draft evaluation. I'm going to take Drake May. I think you got to be patient with him this year. He's got a young team around him. They're going to try to build around him clearly. The upside is huge at the quarterback position. I think he makes sense here at 105 still.
I personally really like that Jacoby Brissett's there because I think that he's probably going to be starting for, the first 6 to 8 weeks, let Drake May get his fundamentals, ironed out a little bit. And also like guys like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, maybe they'll develop a little bit more and maybe the situation will be a little better going into year 2 especially. So, yeah, I like him. Yeah, I think this is where I'm taking Rome Odunze. I don't think there's anybody else. I mean, maybe J.J. McCarthy, because the situation is fantastic, would be the other guy in consideration. But I just have loved Rome Odunze through this whole process. Year 1, I don't love how he's probably going to be the 3rd target. But I think 2025 and forward, a really, really good pairing there with Caleb Williams.
I love that pick because it makes it very easy for me to take J.J. McCarthy. I do have Odunze as my 106 still. In a 2.0 tight end premium, I'm probably going Bowers. I don't know. I have one league where I have to make that decision, but a 1.75 tight end premium, just not a huge difference, but just a little bit of enough for me to go with the beautiful, wonderful landing spot that McCarthy has here. So that is the direction I am happy to go.
Yeah, I still think our top 8 prospects are the same they were pre-draft. The order's just changing a little bit. I'm still going to take Brock Bowers. You don't love the landing spot, but I think they're telling us something about Michael Mayer here. If they're going to take Brock Bowers, I think he's still going to eat. It just might take an extra year or two for them to get that quarterback position, solid. Hopefully by that point he's the leader in targets. So
yeah, and also in that scenario, Devontae Adams, he's going to just be getting older and older. So maybe in a year or two, he won't be as much a target hog as he is right now. At 109, I'm going to stick to who I had here pre-draft as well, and that's Brian Thomas Jr. I like the landing spot personally. I think Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. Christian Kirk, he's a pretty solid wide receiver that's there, but outside of that, Gabe Davis and Zay Jones are the other 2 top receiving options. Evan Ingram as well. He's a pretty good receiving tight end, but I love this landing spot for him. I think Trevor Lawrence, this is the arrows up for him because it could have been pretty bad. If they didn't get a first-round wide receiver, I think his value was going to drop. So I like the pairing with Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr.
And I like that I get the wide receiver 4 in this class. One, Xavier Worthy here. Love the landing spot. You've heard me talk about him all offseason. Love this guy. I, in fact, just traded for the 109 from JP right before we started recording this episode. Traded Nico Collins and 30 Fab, which doesn't sound like a lot, but Fab doesn't reset in this league, and there's only 3 rounds of rookie pick for the 109, in fact, to get Xavier Worthy. Don't snipe me in that league, whoever has the 108. I hope he doesn't listen to our podcast. I've only posted in several leagues that he's in. I mean, I took the 109 for the flexibility. Oops, sorry. Edit that incorrect. So this one for me is a no-brainer at the 110. Am considering, of course, Bo Nix here, but I just love this guy's spot. So, David, I probably made your next choice pretty easy.
Kind of. I'm between 2 guys that I've been high on throughout this process. Ladd McConkey didn't go in the first, but he went very early second. He got a great landing spot. And then Bo Nix, he's going to be a starting quarterback with 12th overall. Kind of hard to pick between those 2, and I do think it depends on your roster. I'm going to go with Ladd just because I like receivers, and I think he has a little higher of a floor.
I would have taken Ladd McConkey over Bo Nix myself, so I'm a little disappointed. But Bo Nix is going to be my pick. I do like that he is paired with Sean Payton. Cortland Sutton, he's a fine wide receiver, and he gets his wide receiver 1 from that he played with in college, and Troy Franklin. And Greg Dulcich, he was hurt last year. His rookie year, he flashed, so I think that he could bounce back as well. I like the spot. Top 12 draft capital, that's pretty nice, so I think he's got job security for at least 2-3 years minimum.
Before we move on to the second round, quick recap. The players off the board so far. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Drake May, Rome Odunze, J.J. McCarthy, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, and Bo Nix. My gut reaction, this seems like a deeper first round than we've had the last few years. I'm not disappointed getting any of these picks, where last year, I think at the end of the first, we were a little disappointed. Same with 2 years ago. Just curious, JP, then David, your opinion on that before we move on to round 2.
I do think that the first round is still, it's still pretty good. I mean, Worthy got a great spot. I think Brian Thomas did, Bo Nix, Ladd McConkey, all 4 of those guys after the 108. They got some great spots. The only guy who did not go round 1 was Ladd, but he was right at the top of the second, and the Chargers traded up for him. So if I have any first-round picks, I'm still pretty happy with what I had there.
Yeah, good first round, and I think we still have a couple of good picks here in the second round to make. Probably some of these first picks in the second round would have been late first in the last couple of years, to your point, Justin. So I think that's very fair.
And at the 201, for me, it is a pretty close to a no-brainer. RB1 of this class. And for me, that is without a doubt 1 Jonathan Brooks. The landing spot. There is no meaningful competition. Chuba Hubbard is a solid guy. He is not great. He's a good running back. He is not going to be competition for him, in my opinion, whatsoever. Miles Sanders, he seems to be dust. The only second-round running back, and I'm getting him in the second round of mock drafts, which I think you might see him going at the 109 in some leagues. He's in that same tier as those guys. And getting him at the 201, I am just stoked. I think it's beautiful value. Obviously, concerns about his leg, but they did full medical evaluations at the combine, and they took him in the second round, right? I'm in at this price. It's a steal.
Yeah, I think in some leagues you could even make a case for taking him over Brock Bowers if there's no tight end premium. I'm not sure I would endorse that, but with no premium, I really couldn't blame you.
So, David, should I do that in the Megala Dynasty where I just got the 109 if Brock Bowers is there asking for a friend?
I thought you were taking. You mean if Worthy goes before that pick too?
Yeah.
I don't know what your roster look like. If you need a running back, sure.
I mean,
No tight end premium definitely hurts. You're gonna have to probably wait a year or two for Bowers to produce. You might get sour on him. You might even be able to buy him for cheaper later on. Here at the 2-2, I think there's a few options. You've got the late first round receivers, Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall. I think if we knew that Ayuk or Debo were going to be traded for sure, I would take Pearsall here. I'm still a little worried about the way they're going to use Keon Coleman. I'm going to go ahead and just follow the QB upside here. Keon Coleman has the best QB in the league. They need a receiver. I like the upside. I am a little worried that it sounds like they're going to use him at X, or at least try to. Let's bet on the upside, and I may have to rethink this decision later, but right now that's what we're locking in at 2-2.
A pretty big tier drop for me.
I think that's a fair point.
Up or down from there, but I don't think that I want to sit at the start of a tier. So up, back a couple picks if you think that this is a difficult choice. Sitting at the first point in that range, never the best place to be.
Keon Coleman has enough pre-draft hype that with this landing spot, you might see him in the back end of the first, though. So at 2-2, you might be looking at Brooks, Ladd, or Bo Nix.
Yeah, I sure hope so, because I have to do somewhere, and I might need a maneuver if the board falls this way. But yeah, I don't envy you making that decision, because I think this decision is hard as well. I'm going to stick to a player that I loved pre-draft, and that's Ricky Pearsall. Now, right now, we don't know if Ayuk or Debo are on the move, but even if he isn't super productive year one, I think year 2 through 9 or 10, he could be a guy who's just always in your lineup as wide receiver or flex, because he's with Kyle Shanahan. He's always got his receivers producing, always, and it's not just one guy as well. And I think Ricky Pearsall is a fantastic guy, player. I don't know if he's a great guy, but yeah, I'm just willing to take the chance on a guy that I believe is really, really talented in this kind of murky range.
Cannot blame you with the process of going with the round 1 wide receiver in the early second round. I'm very torn on doing the same thing right now. I'm looking running back 2 in the class, who in my opinion is Trey Benson, Xavier Legette. These are my 2 choices. I know I'm not going to try to play any game theory. I know probably neither of them are making it back to me here, so I have to just make a decision on who I think is a better bet. And I do think I have to go with Xavier Legette here. I think it's close. If I needed running back, I could definitely see myself going Trey Benson. But just in a vacuum, if I'm making a bet on value and upside, I'm already possibly regretting it. It's very close, but I am going to go with the first round wide receiver.
I think that's a good pick. That's probably where I would have gone if he was on the board for me here. I think Trey Benson obviously has to be in the conversation. I do think Jalen Polk, even though he went a little higher than we were expecting, his depth chart is non-existent. I mean, he's the receiver 1 probably walking in. And I don't know, we haven't even mentioned the top 10 quarterback yet, probably for good reason. I think this is probably when you start thinking maybe Michael Penix for the right team in the right spot. I'm still not ready to do that here, though. I will go Trey Benson, my RB2. I personally love this landing spot. I'm not worried about James Conner. He might need to do year 1 production a little bit, but he might also get cut this offseason.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. That's where I would have gone if he had fallen one more pick. And I'm looking at a 3-pack of wide receivers. Maybe one of them falls back to me 3 picks later, but I'm looking at Jalen Polk. So he went at the top of the second. And then 2 guys who I think are very, very talented, in A.D. Mitchell and Jermaine Burton. And this decision is pretty tough for me, actually. And what I'm going to do here, since I'm in the middle of second, I'm just going to swing for the fences. I just think you want to take upside in this range. I'm going to go with Jermaine Burton here. I like the pairing with Joe Burrow. He did go later than both AD and Jalen Polk, but I think he's extremely talented. I think the character stuff is kind of what made him fall a little bit. And I think Joe Burrow is a great quarterback to kind of help, rein in that the character concerns, the frustrations. I think Joe Burrow, he's Joe Cool. I think he can help, keep the locker room in order with Jermaine Burton.
And if you're watching on YouTube, you literally saw me start typing in AD when he said going for upside. I think David noticed that.
Yeah, I thought that's where he was going too.
And I don't like that because it leaves me with AD Mitchell here on the board, tempting me. Leaves me with Jalen Polk as well. It does leave me heavily considering Michael Penix as well at the 207. We're playing chicken. I think that's a very interesting value proposition. It is very interesting to go and consider Michael Penix here. There is that whole analysis of the Jordan Love kind of value path for him, sitting a couple of years behind a guy learning, which I do think benefits quarterbacks, right? Even like Mahomes sat for a year. However, the difference, in my opinion, between Jordan Love and Penix is Jordan Love, after 4 years in the NFL, is only 2 years older than Penix. So he was a much younger prospect. I think we all talked, we'd have been much more excited with J.J. McCarthy here. And this is going to really lead into our community question later on. How do we evaluate these first-round quarterbacks? I don't like A.D. Mitchell. I don't like any running back destinations. I think I go Jalen Polk here. Maybe. Yeah, I'll do it. This is an ugly spot. Honestly, I'm not as big on Jermaine Burton either, so I think the 206 is kind of an ugly spot as well. But wow, this second round that we were steaming up, we were excited about, it's gotten ugly in a hurry.
Yeah, it tends to do that, doesn't it? I do like the Polk pick there. I think he's got opportunity. I think he's going to be, maybe a flex player, wide receiver 3 kind of guy. But getting that in the middle of the second's not a bad thing. You have left me in a tough spot, and I would rather not be here.
Are you
If I
talking
could
about us
trade-
recruiting you to the podcast
Yeah.
or where you are in the rookie mock draft?
Just everything, man. Life in general, This one decision has me rethinking everything I've done to get to this point.
Unfortunately, Dino Construction does not have health insurance plans, so we can't help you with
Yeah,
this at all.
Unfortunately, that'd be cool if we did. All right, I got to stop stalling here. I've just got to take a bad pick, pretty much. I'm going to do it. I don't love it because he's probably sitting on my bench for 2 years at least before having a chance to gain value. But, maybe there's something going on with Kirk Cousins' recovery. Maybe there's some other reason that they took him here that we're just not aware of as the public. He's a top 10 pick at a quarterback position in a Superflex league. I'm going to take Michael Penix here. I'm going to close my eyes when I do it because I don't like it.
The good
Maybe
news
a
is
couple years from now, it'll be a great pick.
the good news is I had to hit select, so you can close your eyes and not make the mistake of accidentally picking someone else.
Thanks, buddy.
And if this was how a real draft shook out, then I would have won my gamble and gotten A.D. Mitchell back here. And I just think with Jermaine Burton, the pick earlier, T. Higgins, I forget, I didn't even say that T. Higgins is probably gone for sure next year. And he might even be gone this offseason if, somebody comes knocking and offers future picks. But yeah, A.D. Mitchell, I think I have them right beside each other. And I'm going to take him here because, I had him in my top 12. I think a lot of people had him in their top 12 pre-draft rankings. And I don't love this spot. I don't, because they just extended Michael Pittman. That's the thing that I really don't love. And I think Josh Downs is good. But if Anthony Richardson really ascends, I think A.D. Mitchell could be the number 2 target there. And he does get more of those high value targets, red zone targets, and deep targets. So I think he still could be a viable option. And then maybe even 3 years down the road or so. Don't want us to say that. But maybe in the future, he can be a number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, I think I probably, even though I'm not huge on him, would have taken him if you didn't. So we did agree just to draft to the 209, right? I don't have to pick anyone at 210, do I? I am leaning right now between a few players, walking through kind of my thought process. Troy Franklin, day 3 capital, hate it. Blake Corum, he's a handcuff RB, but on a offense that if he got an opportunity, I think he'd be really valuable. Roman Wilson did get day 2 capital, a place where we're not seeing a large amount of target competition for him. It's George Pickens, who's not really a target earner. He's not a volume guy. He's a outside guy, big play guy historically. So I don't hate that pick. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pick him here. Luke McCaffrey sneaks into my thought process here because I don't love any of these guys. For me, I think it has to come down to Roman Wilson or Troy Franklin. At the end of the day, I think I'm going to go Troy Franklin. Maybe this is Pryor's. It's Bo Nix throwing to him, which JP pointed out is definitely a strong selling point for him. Not a crowded depth chart. I actually love that Courtland Sutton is there because he's going to play the X on the boundary. Potentially Franklin lining up right next to him off the line of scrimmage, so he's not going to get pressed so much. So I think that really actually kind of helps him out a lot. Don't love anyone here. Don't love the draft capital, but do like the landing spot, like the player, his production. Did I make a mistake?
I probably would have taken him if you left him, so I can't really say that you made a mistake. It is that point of the draft where you're just kind of calling your shot. Nobody's a perfect prospect. We haven't had any of those for a while, anyways. I do think Roman Wilson is worth consideration here, but I didn't really like him going in. I don't think he really fits what Russell Wilson does as a quarterback, anyways. So he's kind of off my board at this spot. I think Blake Corum probably has a case, but he's got his upside way capped by a better running back. Same with Marshawn Lloyd. This is a tough spot in the draft. I think Ben Sinnott, someone we haven't mentioned yet in a tight end premium, probably has to be in serious consideration. I'm kind of rethinking my mid-third assessment on Kamani Vidal as we go through this process. And I see you highlighting Javon Baker. He's got to be in consideration as well. With the tight end premium, no, I don't know. Ben Simmons definitely in consideration. I'm gonna be a wild card here. I'm gonna go Kamani Vidal.
All right, I like the chaos.
Yeah, for all the viewers, you can see that this part of the draft, you might want to trade these picks before everybody gets all settled into the tiers here. And I'm glad you went Kamani Vidal because there's only one wide receiver that I think has the talent to be to develop into a wide receiver 1 in the NFL, and that is Javon Baker. And I'm a big Drake May fan, so I think that Drake May, if he does turn out to be good, which I think he will, Javon Baker, he could be his wide receiver of the future because in New England, there's not really anybody who's the high-end man and press coverage beater on the outside. Jalen Polk, they took him, but he's more of a flanker slot guy who dissects, he gets the soft spots in zone. Demario Douglas, he's not an X wide receiver. He's more of a flanker slot as well. So yeah, I think Javon Baker stands out as the one guy who is the best press coverage beater as an X. So I think that I actually kind of like him here. I don't love that he went in the 4th round. I really would have preferred day 2 draft capital. But yeah, this is the last wide receiver that I really feel excited about at this point in the draft.
If Baker had day 2 draft capital, I would have taken him over Penix. Just saying.
And that wraps up our 2nd round. In the books, Jonathan Brooks, Keon Coleman, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Trey Benson, Jermaine Burton, Jalen Polk, Michael Penix, Adonai Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Kamani Vidal, and Javon Baker. And with the first pick of the 3rd round, even though we're not doing a 3rd, I'm going to select Luke McCaffrey just because it's fun. So, guys, I'm still considering at this point. I just want to touch on, we'll all do maybe one guy that we are thinking on. For me, I'm very interested in Luke McCaffrey in this range, end of the 2nd, early 3rd, because it's ugly. He's my guy. I think he has the potential to develop into a really good slot PPR receiver in the NFL. So somebody I'm very interested in that narrative, a rookie growing with a rookie QB. David, who's one guy that you're potentially really interested here and as well?
Really interested might be a stretch. Yeah, I mentioned him when I was debating who I was going to take at the back of the second there. I think tight end 2 Ben Sinnott, especially if you're in a premium league, he's at least worth considering. Zach Ertz is above him on the depth chart, but what do you do? He's old. He's injured all the time. I'm not
Mhm.
really worried about him. He might cap his year one production, but we don't count on year one production for most tight ends, anyways. Last year was a bit of an outlier there, but yeah, at the back end of the second, early third, I'm willing to take that shot.
The guy that I would be looking at here outside of Ben Sinnott would be Blake Corum. Kyron Williams, he is a smaller running back, and Sean McVay, his running backs are always productive. I think that if Kyron Williams is hurt, I think Blake Corum steps in, and I think he could easily be a top 12, top 15 running back because I just think he's talented. There's only 4 running backs that went before day 3, and Corum was one of those 4. So I do think that he stands out as the next best running back of this group. Maybe you like Kamani Vidal like David does. He does have an interesting spot. Marshawn Lloyd was the only other guy who went in day 2, and he's kind of playing behind Josh Jacobs. And yeah, I think he's more of a third round pick. He's just going to be a handcuff.
I can't disagree with that. I got a little bit distracted here. I just want to ask you guys one additional question. Round 7, Brendan Rice to the Chargers. Would you rather roster Quentin Johnson or Brendan Rice? David first.
Like, have to? I mean,
You
Quentin
have
Johnson,
to.
man, come on. He's a 7th-round wide receiver, Brendan Rice. Like, I don't like Quentin Johnson, but, like, at least he had first-round draft capital at some point. Maybe the new coaching staff will actually use him better.
Yeah, just teasing there. Of course, not someone we are interested in. Thought it was a fun question. So that wraps up our mock draft. Again, we are less excited than we were before the NFL draft. Maybe things will fall a little bit differently over the next few weeks, but I can't imagine us being very excited about the third round. Seems like we're into the backup running back zone like we usually are in the third round. Guys that if they get an opportunity, so not much has changed. So we're going to move into our community question. David, can you give a quick little overview about that segment again for those who are joining us for the first time?
Sure. If you are joining us for the first time, thank you. Welcome. We kind of developed this segment as a way to shine the light back on you guys as a community. We really believe that growing and learning in this, in this world of dynasty football is a group process. So we don't think that we know everything by any means. So we want to learn from you guys. We want to get your input on things, kind of pick your brains a little bit. So we ask a question at the end or beginning of our show, depending on how we format it. And then next week we go over your answers, we put some input of our own, and then we ask the following week's community question. So from last week, we asked you guys, what time of year do you like to have your rookie drafts and why? And so we'll get into some of the responses from you guys and we'll give some of our input. JP, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, sure thing. So our first response here is from Trav Bob. He says, I like the draft to be within a couple of days of the actual draft. Little more known, but a little unknown too. Maybe that late RB is a waiver pickup, and by August he has a job. Having one draft before the NFL is fun, but very scary. Malik Willis, 101, people know what's up. Yeah, that was pretty rough. Yeah, I think if you're in a hardcore dynasty league, you're doing it immediately after a day or 2 of the NFL draft, or maybe even right before the NFL draft if you're a real sicko. But yeah, I think if you aren't as comfortable with the timeline of being right after the NFL draft, maybe you're not quite as into all the dynasty world as much. I think waiting a week is perfectly fine. All right, and our second response we have here is from Awesome Dumpling. He says, I'm still a newbie in Dynasty. First time ever doing rookie drafts. That being said, I think closer to the NFL draft is good for me. Scratch that draft itch while allowing interesting stuff to happen with waivers if someone comes out of nowhere. Yeah, I do like to do it closer to the NFL draft too because I think it's more fun. I just, you have that itch right after the NFL draft. So I do like that personally, in my opinion.
All right, my response here, my friend McKirk, shout out to the Dynasty Champs League. To draft, you either have to start as soon as the NFL draft ends or right before the season starts. No middle ground here. Well, first of all, only Sis deal an absolute, and I have the higher ground, so I don't need the middle ground. But I've never had one right before the season starts. I kind of think you have a lot of information then. So I think I definitely understand wanting a lot of information or having not so much and having to form your own opinions, doing it kind of in the in between point. I think you do definitely see like by July, but before training camp, there's just very much so like a group think. People don't usually go out of order as much as they do now. So I think I get where you're coming from. Either do it when everyone has all the information at the end and maybe you have to make new decisions again, or perhaps doing it at the beginning where you have to really kind of formulate your own opinions a little bit more. McKirk, maybe try one before the NFL draft. Get crazy just one time, man.
All right, and our final response we're going to read today is from 32 Puma. Shout out to our Dynasty Retirement Home League. We included rookies on our draft when we did our startup at the end of January, I believe, and that'll be relevant here with his response. So he goes, "This is my first year in Dynasty. I could definitely see myself enjoying post-rookie draft because I'm an accountant and I like to know more rather than less. I will say the February startup we did with rookies included in the player pool was pretty great because now I am the Leonardo DiCaprio meme pointing at the TV every time one of my guys gets mentioned in a podcast. Shout out Xavier Leggett." I love that last point because it's true. I've been rooting for a lot of the guys that I drafted on that team as well throughout this process. But we also make mistakes, right, Justin?
Roy Franklin.
But it's fun, you know. We're in this for fun. We're all playing with the same advantage or disadvantage no matter when we do it. I kind of agree with his first point, though. I like to have more information than less. I believe I can use more information to make more informed decisions. Helps me with my process. I understand it helps other people as well. But I still like that advantage. So for me, I know it's kind of boring, but I like right after the NFL draft. I'm not against doing it before because, you know, we go through all this process. We build up our rankings. We have a little bit more knowledge, but sometimes we get caught into a take lock as well. And it takes the NFL draft to get us over that. So I think it's the most fair for the league. It's best for league longevity, and it's best for me as a manager in general. So I like right after the NFL draft.
JP, what about you?
I like right after the NFL draft as well. We're obviously kind of sickos, and we're always looking into all the rookie information all year long. So yeah, I like to do it within a day or two personally.
Yeah, I'm definitely a little bit of a dynasty sicko. I like to do before the NFL draft in very small moderation, 1 or 2 leagues. I don't want to have to make a lot of it, but it is so much fun to be the Leonardo DiCaprio meme pointing at the TV. So I think if you don't do it and you have a portfolio, do at least 1 or 2 because it's fun. Plant your flag. It's risky. People on podcasts say it's stupid to do it before the NFL draft. Yeah, of course it is, but it's fun. So do it for fun. But I wouldn't do it in all of my leagues. I do think after the NFL draft is best. I personally, I I like it right after the NFL draft if possible. But in leagues that I commish, because the NFL draft ends on a Saturday, and I like to have a slow clock. I don't like people to feel pressured. I like them to trade. Usually, I roll it out the following Friday, just to make sure that everybody has like the weekend to dedicate to making trades, doing their research. Because I don't think everyone is a degenerate. I don't want people to have a advantage over other people. Give people a little bit of time to gather their information, but not so much. Just because I think it's a little bit more fair for the league and parity, perhaps long term. I don't like waiting any longer than that, though. After that startup season, guys, startup season. No, rookie draft's not in August. I mean, maybe I'm becoming a Sith dealing in absolutes here, but no, unacceptable. And that's kind of my thoughts there. David, what do we want to know from the fine people for next week's community question?
Yeah, so we're kind of wondering how you evaluate the value of first round quarterbacks who have less desirable profiles but good draft capital. I think for this one, mostly we're talking Michael Penix, but more generalities, we can go back to other draft classes and look at other quarterbacks that fit this description. But it's a really important question. Quarterback's such a valuable position when you hit on it. Are you willing to risk taking a shot on a guy that you didn't love or didn't go to the place you like just because the NFL tells you they like him? Or are you going to be a little more risk averse and stay away from that guy still?
And of course, if you are watching on YouTube, please comment your answers below to this question. Again, if you are listening on a podcast, you can reach out to us at DinoConFF on Twitter. You can email us, dinoconstruction dinoconstructionff@gmail.com. Also, all of our personal Twitters are in the info below on the episode description, both on YouTube as well as anywhere that you consume. We love nothing more than hearing your responses, so please shout us out with those. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dino Construction Podcast. It's been a whirlwind, but we are excited to be reacting to this NFL draft. We've been waiting so long. We hope it was as useful for you to react with us as it was for us. And from all of us here at Dino Construction, until next time.